Welcome to another video from Cardboard East. My name is Jay. I play board games from Asia and share what I find with all of you. Today, we're going to go on a trip on an ultimate voyage across the Indian Ocean. This is Ultimate Voyage, published by Little Monks and designed by Leonard Tu. This is on Kickstarter, and I'll put a link down below so you can see the Kickstarter campaign and all the wild stretch goals that Leonard has planned for this campaign. But first, we need to talk about some history. Now, what pulled me into Ultimate Voyage is the history. If you don't know what this is about the Zheng He treasure fleet of the late 1300s, early 1400s, the height of the Ming Dynasty. When you think of ancient China, this is ancient China at its zenith. This is when the Forbidden Palace is built. This is when literacy across the entire country was raised, or most people can read. They're reading Journey to the West, they're reading Romance of the Three Kingdoms. They are wildly popular. People are writing poetry, creating artworks, and people are just being like artisans. And they're making a living doing that. The canals were invented and implemented all throughout China. People are exploring more and more China. Trade is up, education is up. It is the height of ancient China. But in this height, in this search for knowledge and education, comes Zheng He. These fleets, these ships are huge. I can't stress that enough. They are absolutely massive. Now, do you remember Columbus? You remember Columbus, right? The Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. They are like 22, 17, 15 meters long. They're kind of small ships. The treasure ships here are about 130 meters long with 9 masts. 9. I mean, the Columbus's ships maybe had like 1 or 2 or 3, not 9. 9 is ridiculous. Now, 134 meters, that's longer and wider than a football field, I believe. Do you mean like an American football or like European football? Both. These ships were massive. And not only were they huge in size, but they are huge in height. Like there are multiple floors, multiple decks. I think there's like 5 or 6 decks. These were big enough to fit in giraffes and elephants and zebras and animals. People called them floating cities, and they're not wrong. There were 7 trips made, 7 voyages, and this game is about the 7th one. But on I think the peak voyage, the total crew of all the ships was like 27,000 people in this crew sailing the ocean. Now, this was in the late 1300s. Titanic, which was in the early 1900s, 500 years later, was a huge ship, and it sunk. But these ships were about roughly half to a third of the size of Titanic. These were massive, massive wooden ships. And Zheng He didn't just sail the ocean. He actually had these crazy adventures. Like he found like local pirates that were giving trouble, got rid of the pirates. There are like rebellions like with friendly neighbors, got rid of the rebellions. There were kingdoms that didn't like him, so he got rid of those governments, installed like a new puppet government that loved the Ming Dynasty. This is all happening in the late 1300s, early 1400s, like hundreds of years ago. And not only was it just did he have all these great adventures, he went a long way. Like he went to Southeast Asia, he went to India, he eventually made it to like Jeddah and Mecca because I believe his dad was Muslim. Yeah, just wild history here. Made it to Jeddah, made it to Mecca, made it to East Africa. He sailed extremely far, like hundreds of years ago. And it's just wild that he was able to do that and be back. And there are statues in like Malaysia or Indonesia of like people of his crew that stayed there. Like he impacted the cultures of the regions that he sailed to, permanently altering history. And it's just wild that he was able to do that long ago. But is all that history crammed into this game? Well, I'm going to teach you how to play and then let you know what I think and the vibes I got from the gameplay. So let's hit the table and check it out. Welcome to 1431, the final voyage of Zheng He. You will take your ships from Nanjing here and sail all the way to East Africa and back and score victory points. Everybody's favorite. Now, there is a lot going on in this game. Well, a lot. So I'm only going to give you a very brief overview of the game. To get started, how do you win? Victory points. And there are 4 ways to get victory points. One is the prosperity track, which is that yellow track that goes up here. Now, it does max out at 15, but you can score more than 15. Below that is the profit track, which is the pink one. It also maxes out at 15, but you can also score more than 15. And throughout the course of the game, your markers will slowly move up there. Now, down below, you can see the story track. English, I can speak this. And you'll notice that the ocean is also divided into 6 regions. So you have green, gold, blue, red, purple, and brown. Now, each of these will be associated to this little section down here. So here you can see this is the Burma and Bengal area. Now, throughout the course of the game, you'll score victory points or story points in that particular region doing various things. And at the end of the game, you'll score 4 or 2 points here, depending on various rules. So again, you have the prosperity, profit, story, and last but not least, you have the tower. Now, your ships will be sailing from Nanjing all around the ocean, having lots of adventures, but eventually you'll make your way back. And when you do, you'll look at all the buildings that you've built and add that all together, and then you'll take these little pieces here and start building the tower. So as you can see here, this is all different player colors. So this is blue, green, this is orange, and that is red. You're going to take the ones of your player color and then put it here. And as you can see, the blue player already has 3 levels of the tower. And those are the 4 main ways of how to score points. But wait! As you're in this race to score as many points as you can, there are also 4 ways the game can end. First and foremost is Zheng He himself. So you can see Zheng He right here. Well, he's very old and his health is waning, and eventually he'll slowly move around the track, and if he ever makes it to the end, well, he'll pass away, triggering the end game. The other way is the round counters. There at most can be 9 rounds. So at 9 rounds, that triggers the end of the game. Also up here, the prosperity and profit track, we've talked about them. If one player has at least 15 and 15, well, that also triggers the end of the game. 15 on profits, 15 on prosperity. So you have the 2 tracks, you have Zheng He's health, 9 rounds, and you also have these objective cards. If you are able to score 4 objective cards, well, then that will trigger the end of the game. No matter how the end game is triggered, you'll calculate your points. Whoever has the most points wins Ultimate Voyage. But wait, there is a very interesting rule here. After you calculate up all your points, if one player has more than 30 points, and then the other players each have more than 15 points, well then whoever has the most points wins, typically that player. But if neither of those are the case, if the player wins who doesn't have more than 30 and all the other players don't have more than 15, well then nobody wins. So there is this semi-cooperative rule in the game, although I've never seen that happen. Now, before we continue, I do want to zoom in on one of the little sections here. This is Palembang, which is actually quite interesting because Zheng He actually did stop here. This is where he killed a local pirate and saved the area. Now, each area, as you can see, will have these little treasure tokens that you can explore for, and there'll be various things. They'll give you various points. These are various like prosperity and profit points for different animals. You also have these knowledge tokens here, which you will use to complete objectives. Now, over here is this little scale here, and you could use one of these cubes to keep track of that as it goes up and down, or you could use a player cube as well. And this will just determine, well, how friendly or hostile this particular area is to the Ming Empire. Now, in addition to that, if you see down here, you can see like this little building here, and that's because you can build buildings on each of these locations. So here, the blue player puts here, and they built a building. Yay! Also, keep in track that if you notice here, there are arrows here going in various directions, and also there are 2 different colors of ocean here. There's the blue, and then this is green. Now, I won't go too much into detail here, but please keep in mind of this as we shift to another part of the player space so you can see, have an idea of what's going on as I talk about it. Okay, so we've seen the main board, but now we're going to take a look at what the player board looks like, and this is essentially what you'll be looking at through most of the game. The most important parts of which are these 5 action cards and these 3 discs. Let's talk about these 3 discs first. Well, in the game, there are these 3 dice, and they're going to be rolled at the beginning of the round. So I'll just go ahead and roll them here. So that's 2, 2, and 1. Now these dice can be both positive and negative. So I'm going to take this disc here, see that's negative, turn it to positive, rotate around to 2, positive 2. And I'll mark it down here that it's 2. This one is positive 2, not negative, so I rotate this here to 2. And now that's positive 2. This one is a roll of 1. So I pick this up. Well, it's not negative, it's positive, and that's 1 there. So I'll put this here. And now I don't need to keep the dice here. This will go back. All players will do this and on their player boards here, so that way they could see what the value of the die rolls that they're all sharing. Now, these 3 discs, why are they so important? Well, that's because your actions are really important. Every round, you're only going to be taking 3 actions. And these are all the 5 actions here. If you notice, these colors here really quick is yellow, orange, green, blue, and red. And that's because that's how the startup will be. As you all start up here. You notice this red has a +2, and that means my combat, which is red, has been upgraded to a +2. And you'll just put it up there where the arrow is. This is the unupgraded side, the non-upgraded side, and this is the upgraded side. And hey, look, it's +2. So what's going to happen is, let's say I take a combat action. I'm going to find where the combat card is here. It's position 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, +2, so that's 7 points. I'm going to tap it here to say that I've done this, and then I'm going to choose a die. So 7, let's choose, I choose this one, so 7 + 2 is 9. That's 9 points. And you're going to be doing skill checks like this throughout the entire game. Sometimes it might even be negative. So let's say this was a -1 here. I take this explore action. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, and I'll choose this one to -1, so that's a 3. So the skill check was a 3. And then you'll be taking these actions here, and then these 3 will go all the way over here. These will slide up, these will come untapped for the next round, and then you'll be ready to go. Ta-da! But you can only take 3 actions because you'll be tapping 1 card and then sliding one of these over, signifying that you used each die at least 1 time. Now, what are these 5 actions? Well, let's dig into that. But first, let's talk about these 2 really quickly here. This is porcelain and these are troops. And this is how you modify your skill checks. Sometimes you'll use your porcelain, sometimes you'll use your troops, and it depends on which action. In fact, it's marked down here as a nice little reminder. Now, I did mention before that you can build buildings, and you can even build buildings on your ship. So you can build a building here, and you'll generate more porcelain. You can build a building here, and you'll recruit more troops. So there is a little bit of flexibility here, but these 2, the primary purposes, are for these skill checks and to boost them. Now, let's talk about the 5 actions. First up here is the sail action, and essentially you'll be moving your ship around the ocean. This is how you move your ship around the ocean. You just take a sail action and then just follow what the card says there. Next up here is the explore action, and explore action is basically how you get these knowledge tokens. Now, these knowledge tokens are going to be very useful throughout the course of the game, and they're one of the main reasons how you score objective cards. Objective cards is how you win the game, or one of the ways how you win the game. Over here, you have the trade action, and that's how you get these tokens here. Now, as you can see, like these tokens all do various things. They could help you score complete objectives. They help you give you prosperity or profit or story points. There are a lot of different things that these trade tokens can do, and this action is how you get them. Now, up here is combat, but you also notice that combat has construction. So every time you get to a region, you can combat them to make sure that they are now friendly because you've won the victory there, and then you can construct a tributary there or a building there, and that could be used to help score points with the tower, as well as to improve all your skill checks in that area moving forward. But I mean, you don't have to resolve everything through force. I mean, you will if you're the commander, because why wouldn't you? That's look at that sword. You can also use the fifth action here, and that is diplomacy. And diplomacy against a port that's definitely not that's definitely hostile towards you. You could use your words, not your weapons, and then you'll be able to build buildings and score story points there, because you're just an amazing storyteller and you've just enrich their lives just listening to them. You can also use this against encounter cards. Now's a good time to talk about encounter cards. In addition to these objective cards, you also have these encounter cards that you can encounter in various ways throughout the course of the game. And then you just flip them over, and this will kind of tell you what needs to be done. And here they are. It's beautiful artwork. And you can even like have one that's ongoing, and you'll just place it here, and then you'll constantly have to deal with it. Over here on this left side, you'll see this little icon here, and that's for these objective cards that you've completed, and you can place them here. So this one is 5 points, and you can see this one is 3 points. But remember, once you get to 4 objectives, game's over. But this is just the commander. The game does come with several characters, like the navigator, who's also going to specialize in sailing. You have the merchant, who's going to specialize in trade. You have the interpreter, which is obviously good for diplomacy. And you have the healer, which has a very unique trope about gaining troops. So she's able to heal troops up rather quickly. And you have the diviner, which deals with the dice mechanics, and she'll be allowed to re-roll some of these. And every time you play the game, you can use a different one of these characters, and on the back of these has just this nice story here to show where you came from, what your ideas are, and just to get you involved a little bit more into the history and the lore of the game. And that is how you play Ultimate Voyage. Now that was a very, very like a top side rule side. There are a lot of rules to this game, but I'll get into that in just a little bit. First, let's talk vibes. I love the Zheng He history. I love the idea of the treasure ships. I love that they were so huge and massive. But I've seen some comments on BGG that said like this is a Euro game, it's a Euro strategy game, and I have to do a strong, hard disagree. If I had to pinpoint it, I would probably say this reminds me of an early, maybe late aughts, early 2010s Fantasy Flight game. Now, what does that mean? That's one of my favorite genres of games, mind you. It means that's a little bit of things. It's kind of like a war game, which means that there are a lot of intricate rules. There are a lot of if X, then Y, if Y, then Z. It does have an adventure game. There's exploratory nature to it. There are counter cards that you can flip over and see what happens. There are skill checks and modifiers. You're not rolling dice in this game. I mean, you are rolling dice at the beginning of the round, but you're able to mitigate that with your porcelain and your troops pretty easily. Now, I do want to mention that Leonard, the game designer, if you look on BGG, he designed 2 games previously, and those are both 2 war games. And I'm not talking, you know, like Memoir 44. I'm talking hex encounter games with chits, like hardcore war games. Ultimate Voyage, this is definitely the lightest of the 3 designs, but I want to stress to you that this is not a Euro strategy game. It's easily not an Ameritrash game. It is somewhere between a war game and a Euro game, leaning a little bit more towards war game. And those are the main vibes of the game. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I do love war games, and I do love encounter cards and adventure cards. They definitely have that sense of exploration that's there. One of the things that I love about war games are their willingness to not streamline the game because they want to have some rule that really illustrates and honors the history of that war or battle. And there is a lot of that in Ultimate Voyage. I mean, even the locations that they chose for the map were places that, you know, Zheng He actually went to. He went to this place that I believe that he killed like a local pirate that was causing some trouble, and that's on the map. There was one kingdom that he stopped to, like I think it's Kot, off the coast of India, which they didn't like. They thought they were like colonizers, like a hostile force, and then they came back and they really didn't like them, and you know, Zheng He overthrew the government and put up like a puppet government of someone who likes the Ming Dynasty. Yeah, They did that way back when in the 1400s. So there are a lot of things like that in this game, which I do really love that they put it in there. Now, I did mention the rules, and the rules are intense. Like, it did take me a good bit to get through them. Now, if you read it cover to cover, you will be able to play the game. I had to write notes so that way I could actually flow and follow the game and follow my notes to make sure I'm playing the game correctly. Thankfully, on the action cards are quite intricate as to what happens in those actions. So following those, you're about 85% there. Now, the game also comes with, I didn't go much into this in the rules, but the game also comes with a solo mode where you're fighting against a bot, Niccolo de Conti, and he's actually an encounter card in the game. I really enjoyed the solo play of the game. Now, in addition to the solo mode, when you're fighting against Niccolo de Conti, there's also a way to make it more simple, like where they streamline the rules a little bit, just a little bit. And there's another module to make the game even more difficult. So that every round, you're doing things with the storm, you're doing things with Zheng He's health. I have played both, and I think the average game is probably where I fall. I think that's right at the level of complexity that I prefer. I will say, though, that your first game of this is going to take about 3 hours. It's just because the rules are so dense and that it's going to take time for you to play through the game at least one time to make sure that you're playing it correctly. Afterwards, you should be able to knock it out into well under 2 hours, especially at the lower player counts. But that first time you're going to go through the game, expect to go back to the rule book every now and then because there are a lot of little rules in the game that you might miss. The theme of the game just really, really shines here. And that's partially because I think of Leonard's, the designer's, background in war games. And it really feels like you're exploring the ocean, exploring the lands, trading things, completing objectives, going on these little adventures here and there. Like it definitely feels something out of like Sinbad of the Seven Seals. Like you're just having this grand adventure on the ocean. You definitely get those vibes. And I really, really appreciate that experience in this game. Artwork. Now, I do like the artwork of the game, but I do find it a little bit inconsistent. Like the objective cards look one way, and then your character cards look another way. And I wish that the art was a little bit more uniform in look. But I mean, I think is a minor detail. Obviously, you're going to be very pleased with how it looks visually because it looks stunning on the table. Now, by far, my favorite thing of the game is the gameplay, and that's arguably the most important. There is action cards, and the action cards there, and choosing which, and it's very similar to Arc Nova, and that might be why I like it. But having the action cards there, being in the position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going, okay, maybe I'll do this one. It's really strong now. I'm comparing that with the die rolls. Oh, do I want to have the strong position with a strong die for an ultra strong turn, be wildly successful and gain a lot? Or do I want to balance that out with a negative? Because sometimes there are negative dice there, and you have to make the best of a bad situation. And knowing, okay, well, everyone else is in this boat. Maybe I do weak on this one, so that way next turn, this will be stronger, and then I can take that action there. And I really, really like that planning. The action card system with the dice is easily my favorite part of the game, and I would love to see more games use that mechanic for that turn-based system. Now, I say dice a lot, but and a lot of people are like, oh, it's dice, it's randomness. I don't have as much hate on randomness as other players do. The dice are rolled at the beginning of the round, so everyone is dealing with that problem. And so I really like how that's implemented in the game. And there are lots of ways for you to modify your skill checks. You have the porcelain, you have the troops, and there are lots of ways for you to mitigate that, as well as planning out your turn and trying to hope and plan for the next turn. Now, because of that, though, I feel that the game is a little bit more tactical versus strategic. Strategic is more of this long-term plan in the game, and tactical is more like turn by turn. I feel that turn by turn, I'm making those decisions, seeing what the best route is for that given time. But there is that story arc of the game, which I mentioned before, where that first two acts, you're kind of establishing those routes, trying to figure out where's your pattern for victory. And Act 3 is all about that race, turning your engine on, trying to score as many points as you can with those trade routes, and hopefully closing the game with higher points than your opponents. Overall though, I will say that I did enjoy my time with Ultimate Voyage. It is going to be in that 2 to 3 hour range for that adventure game. Now, what I have to stress more than anything else is that this is not like a Euro strategy game. If you're looking for something like Lacerda, this is not it. This is more of a war game, adventure game that has all these fun encounters. If you really like the theme and you really like rules, the rules are a bit intense. I have to say that up front. And the rule book, you can read cover to cover and know how to play, but you're gonna have to spend some time with that rule book, making sure that you understand all the intricate rules for every single action and for the opening and the closing of the rounds. And because of the heaviness of the rules, I will say that I like this most at solo because I didn't have to worry about what other players, making sure everyone's playing correctly. I can just relax knowing that I know how to play the game and just have this nice, big, grand solo adventure. But that's been my overview of Ultimate Voyage. My goal here isn't to tell you whether I liked the game or not, but to give you an idea of the game to determine whether or not you will like the game or not. I'll put a link down below to the Kickstarter so you can see the campaign and see all the wild stretch goals that Leonard has planned for this campaign. Once again, my name's Jay. I play board games from Asia and share what I find with all of you. I'll see you in the next video.